Welcome everyone to People on Dating. I'm your host Will Morales, and for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this podcast is about the ups and downs of dating and how to navigate through it. Today, my guest is Augusto Blanco. Did I get your name right?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks
Uh,
for
he-
having me here.
no, it's my pleasure. So he's a clinical psychologist with a postgrad in men's studies. He works as a therapist for men and as a corporate psychologist for international companies. Augusto works via telehealth internationally, has been writing about men's mental health issue for different websites. Well, again, Augusto, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. How's it going?
Doing okay. I'm very excited. I'm always happy to talk about just men's experiences, and especially when it comes to dating, since that seems to be the main topic that I get asked about, even when people come to my practice. Like it's crazy how many issues we're finding there across
Yeah.
the.
So what was your journey like to become a clinical psychologist? What was that journey like for you? And what made you pick the men's space? So what was that journey like for you?
So it's interesting because I distinctly remember being 17 and having to choose between university or get to work, as one does.
Hmm.
And obviously, I wanted to study, but I always thought that it's almost impossible to ask a 17-year-old what they want to do their whole life.
Right.
Like crazy. I wasn't even sure what I liked when it comes to music, when it comes to women, when it comes to anything. So to ask me outright what I wanted to commit for my whole life, that was bonkers.
Right.
However, close to my hometown, there's a very good psychology program in the local university, and I knew that psychology was so vast that no matter what I liked in the future, I could possibly find a relation between psychology and that thing. So
Right.
that's what I chose. I chose to study psychology. And throughout those years, different things resonated with me. I wanted to become a sports psychologist because I was very active doing some martial arts and doing marathon training. I wanted to get into research because at some point I really liked that. But
Hmm.
eventually I settled on men's studies out of my own experience as a guy because like most people I meet, I didn't have a very strong and present father figure who was usually out of town, even out of the country working to sustain us. But that left me without a clear guidance when it came to how to be a man, how to
Hmm.
flirt, how to engage with the other sex, how to defend myself, how to create a close group of friends. And that took a toll on me, especially during high school, because I don't think anyone has good high school experiences. And that's crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so what I had to do was bash my head against the wall, especially as a young adult,
Mhm.
trying to find information online, praying that whatever was put in front of me actually worked and wasn't one of many scams, schemes, or just people touting nonsense. And I got very lucky, not just with the information I found online, but also the people I was able to meet in my during those years. And I quickly recognized that not everyone had that opportunity, had that luck. And that showed in the very high suicide rates that we have for men across the globe,
Yeah.
the how we have the highest rates of addiction for almost all substances, which is insane. The just the huge amount of sexual abuse that we suffer, the high incarceration rates, like no matter what numbers you look at, we see that we are struggling. So I
Mhm.
wanted to put my hat in the ring and try to do something about that.
Yeah, no, I can't even imagine what you went through. And today's a great subject, right? We're talking about men dating after divorce. Now, I've never been married, but I've had some good friends that were married, and one of the things they would tell me because I would ask them, "Hey, how's it going out there?" It's rough. I don't know how to date. I was married for 15 years. I was married for 10 years. Dating is different from when I was, younger. So, Augusto, in your practice and clients that you might deal with, Has dating changed that much from, let's say, the early 2000s to now? Because what I'm seeing is that women are making more demands. Women are, according to what I'm reading, achieving more. They're going to college. They're pretty much starting their own businesses and all that. And a man coming into or coming out of a divorce, now it seems like they gotta, check off this checklist that some women have. So are you seeing that guys after a divorce are having trouble finding someone now?
Oh yeah,
I
definitely.
know I went on a long tangent, but basically, are men
100.
having trouble finding dates now?
Yes, 100%. See, I work with people from 20 years old to 70 years old was the
Okay.
max. And a lot of people show up when they first get divorced or separated from their partner for many years,
Hmm.
and they are having it rough. Like the first big obstacle is to become stable, because no joke, these guys feel like they are unable to live without their partner. And sometimes their partner was very toxic. We're talking women that used to humiliate them, to cheat on them, to stonewall them, to lie to them, and they even thought at times that they wanted to break that relationship off. But for
Hmm.
whatever reason, they struggle too much. They become super anxious. They can't sleep. They overthink constantly. The only coping mechanisms they can find are usually masturbation, alcohol, and weed or tobacco.
Oh,
Like those
wow.
are the big three. Yeah. And so the first big challenge is to get them to just feel stable, like to teach them how to be okay on their own without having to depend on an external crutch that may
Mhm.
be going against their health. Once they're stable, then we can actually begin the work. And once they start to go out and try to meet other people, what they find is that not only are they struggling to adapt to today's landscape, which involves dating online, Instagram, being able to flirt in a very different way and to provide other things to a relationship, not
Yeah.
just being in that material provider role. Because as you pointed out, women are also learning, they're also getting jobs. They are outperforming men in every stage of education right now or
Mhm.
close to, which is crazy. So they are finding themselves like, okay, what I was taught my whole life to give now is not enough. What do I do? That is the key point. We try to, right, trying to foster those guys into being able to provide also emotionally, because at the end of it, that's what the other person is looking for. They're looking for
Right.
a life partner. They're looking for someone that stands beside them, not above, not below, and that they're able to share the wins together, to lament the losses together, to be able to build life projects, sometimes things that guys did not do at all before or were unable to do by themselves. So it's a very complex work, even though the goal sounds simple,
Mhm.
but it's extremely rewarding, especially for them, because they start getting a new type of energies. They start feeling more confident. They start feeling more of that inner strength. And along the way, they usually lose those addictions or those crutches that they used to rely on, and
Right.
they can actually start connecting, not just with themselves, but also with people differently. And they go, oh wow, so this is what a real relationship looks like. This is pretty nice.
Okay. So basically, you're trying to get their mind back into like a focus, getting off whether it's the tobacco or the porn addiction. I mean, how,
Mhm.
I guess it depends on the person, right? Maybe the younger they are, maybe they're more, and tell me if I'm wrong, they're more open to learning about, getting out there and meeting someone new. Do the older people, let's say 40, 50, 60 years old, do they give you trouble because they're so used to, one way it's structured? They were with their wife for so many years, they used to she's doing something and he does something. Now you're alone and now you got to do everything. You got to focus on 100% of the money, 100% on your health, 100% on cooking for yourself. Does that make sense? Did I Was I in the
Yeah.
ballpark
Yeah,
there?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I gotcha. So in the beginning, it's hard, but it's also part of that stabilization because when
Hmm.
people are having a rough time, you're gonna see that their hygiene takes a hit,
Oh
their
wow.
diet takes a hit, their sleeping habits take a huge hit. The social media use usually increases by a lot. There's doom scrolling all around. They're trying to just stay distracted. So by helping them get their life together, those things are also included in the package. When someone
Hmm.
starts caring more about what they eat, the physical activity that they put in, the what their mind is focused on, maybe a book rather than just social media,
Right.
then they also start taking care of their cave, their man cave around them. Because if you value yourself, you're not gonna live in a pigsty. You are going
Right.
to take at least the basic care for your place as well. And that's going to reflect also on your mind. A clean space is a clean mind, you used to say.
Yeah.
So I have found that both are very compatible there.
Hmm.
Then you may have some obstacles when it comes to putting themselves out there, especially online, just because they grew up in a different stage.
Yeah.
However, that's just usual being a bit afraid of new experiences, of having to learn something new, and what if I fail? What if I get it wrong the first time? However, we know that we as humans thrive on failures because we
Yeah.
learn by trial and erroring our ways into great discoveries. That's been true for engineers, for scientists, for any great person that we have in our history. So we actually engage with that very nicely and teach them how to feel comfortable having those failures that eventually lead them towards successes. And at
Right.
some point, it's crazy. I remember a guy that he was in his 30s. He was actually a virgin. He was never able to be with someone, and he was very scared of putting himself out there on Instagram, Tinder, Bumble, etc. Because he was bullied during high school, he was very shy, etc. So the first month we just focus on getting some stability, weeding out some stuff that was not helping him, and getting him to confront those fears slowly but surely. The second month, I remember he started a Tinder account. He matched with the girl he kind of liked. They went out on two dates, and on the second date, he lost his virginity.
Oh
Like
wow.
insane, just 2 months. And I'm like, it was that easy, dude. It was that easy. You just needed the
Yeah.
correct tools and to apply them. Here you go. You're done.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, as young men, as they're growing, like for me, I grew up with my grandfather and grandmother. Now, when I was a teenager, my grandmother passed away. So basically until I was 24, when my grandfather passed away, I wasn't taught, as they say, the birds and the bees about women. I learned by watching TV. Maybe I read something, but mostly some from my friends, and even some of my friends weren't that experienced. So it was hard at the beginning to, get off whether I was shy or I didn't have confidence and all that. Now, obviously a man that's been married and all that, they get a divorce now to regain that confidence because maybe they think, oh, she doesn't want me, she doesn't need me anymore. What am I going to do? Like you said, you were helping this young man, what, 20 to 30 years old, right?
Hmm.
So again, someone that's in their 30s and 40s, how did they regain that confidence though? Especially if let's say, God forbid, a woman cheats on him, his wife cheats on him, or the love is just gone. Let's say one or the other, regaining
Hmm.
that confidence.
So it's usually a bit easier than before. Why? Because they're usually more established. Okay, they
Okay.
love the relationship, but they already usually have a career, a circle of friends, some activities that they participate in. So
Mm.
just by getting them to be in a stable state of mind, like I mentioned, they already communicate that stability to others. And they start telling me on their own, you know what? I think a coworker well, maybe not a coworker, that's a bit messy, but
Yeah.
you know that girl from the run club? I think she's sending some signals my way. Okay, that's pretty cool. Or you know what? I went to a party and I met some mutual friends, and it turns out that I got someone's number. It really resonates with other people, and just by participating in those spaces they always were, but showing up differently, that already sends a different signal to others,
Mhm.
and they answer, they reply in kind. So many times they don't even need to use dating apps, and the times they needed to, one fun thing that we did was just open a Tinder account as if they were a woman and just start looking at Tinder profiles from
Yeah.
people close to their age and just
Mm.
see what's out there, like what their competition is. No joke, they usually suck. Like capital A, suck.
You mean the
So
profile itself? The people? Oh, okay. Oh,
yeah, other
wow.
people's profiles are like, if you go on Instagram or TikTok and try to find some, there are a few influencers that do this. They open a woman's account and then try to find a good men profiles.
Yeah.
It is rough. Like, there's always something that you say, yeah, that clearly can't go there. So just by doing that, they have a baseline of what to achieve in their profile, and it
Ah,
gets them matches, it gets them success because they are able to clear way above most of the other guys that
right.
easily.
So, one of the things that and I want to do it in a future podcast where some men, they don't have a space to hang out. Because in this generation, I'm seeing guys or I'm hearing about guys, they're playing video games. They don't like to talk on the phone. They don't have many male friends and all that. So I want to talk about that, on a future podcast about, joining men's spaces, playing
Yeah.
sports and all that. Uh, with your clients and all that, are men trying to hang out with other guys to build up a community? Or, because once you're married, it seems like, uh, you give up those friends. Yeah, okay. So I'm definitely right because, and I said this before, Augusto, and if I meet someone and I have a friend who got married, 9 out of 10 times I'm going to leave them alone. That's your new life. That's your wife. Hey, maybe we might talk on the phone once in a while, but hanging out, I'm not going to do that. How does a former married man like get back into a community of like-minded guys, whether they play sports, watch movies, whatever it is? Do you have a community build up for these guys, or what do you recommend?
So that's a good question, and the answer is tough simply because, as you mentioned, third spaces are disappearing in
Yeah.
favor of more online connectivity. So there's definitely spaces that can help create that sense of community, but
Mm.
one has to be very careful because another thing that's very common in men's spaces is this sense of having a hierarchy, a pecking order, and
Ah.
like you mentioned sports. I know a lot of guys that have tried to get into sports, and they very quickly found that there's that environment of kill or be killed. You either
Mhm.
step on someone or people are gonna step onto you. That's a shitty way of creating community. You can't build community,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Like, and that can rehash some scars that they may be carrying from an earlier time, maybe their childhood or maybe similar. So one has to be very careful which spaces they actually try to engage with. Some of the ones they found success in has been hiking groups.
Oh,
Everyone
okay.
loves hiking, and people usually are very chill if they like going up mountains. Board games club, that's a new one, and it's very social, and you can even be competitive and just regulate that. There's always going to be a group of tryhards, but you can easily identify them and play with other groups.
Yeah.
Some sports are going to be fine. Just be careful of very competitive sports. and you're always gonna have a douchebag. So
Isn't that the truth?
yeah, we also have to practice how to stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
That's something key, especially for the workplaces. But those are three spaces that I've seen success in, not just for myself, but also for friends and for clients. But
Okay.
one has to be careful about that, what the vibe is in that group. Is it a group that welcomes warmly other people, or is it a blood arena?
Gotcha. Okay, no, that definitely makes sense. Well, first of all, Ghost, I wanted to tell you thank you so much for being on the podcast. I could definitely talk to you for another hour, and I definitely want to have you back on. Before I let you go, anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to promote? For yourself or anything you could think of.
Sure, if you want to read more about what I write for men's mental health, you can look at my website, manhelpingmen.com. And
Okay.
even if you're looking to start therapy with someone that knows about men's issues, you can contact me there. I offer a free initial interview of 20 minutes so that you get to know me, how I work, how I work about your particular issue. So feel free to join up, even if it's just to read the articles. I try to publish once or twice a month for sure. I just got one about a long ass guide about how to make friends as an adult, because a
Okay.
lot of people struggle with that, and another one about bigorexia or muscle dysmorphia in men, which is
Okay.
something that's very prevalent and I don't see that talked about as often.
No, I
So
agree there.
definitely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And say that website one more time.
Manhelpingmen.com.
All right, sounds good. And before I let you go, one last word on dating after a divorce. What advice can you give, these men that are, struggling to get out there again? If you could give, one last word.
Okay. First, learn to regulate your internal states,
Okay.
because if you can't handle yourself on your own, when someone else enters the picture very closely, it's gonna be mayhem. And secondly, try to open that Tinder account as a woman and see what other people are doing. You're gonna be shocked.
That I might do myself just to do some research, not to look for dates, but
Yeah,
just to do some
I
research.
honestly recommend that for sure.
Yeah. Well, again, Augusto, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Will.
Yeah, my
Lovely.
pleasure. Yeah. Bye bye.
Okay.